Okay, welcome back to the Gospel of Rock. Last time we did the Rolling Stones, You Can't Always Get What You Want. When we were, I thought about it a little bit more, and I thought that you could put forth a theory that Mick Jagger prophesied the death of Jimmy and Jim Morrison in that song, with Mr. Jimmy. He was standing in line with Mr. Jimmy. This is the third verse, the penultimate verse, because there's one more that's a recapitulation verse, but it's different, where a bleeding man the woman in the first verse has a cup full of blood, and she was practicing the art of deception. I forgot. I'd have to look at the verse again. Sorry, but the other verse, the verse before that is, I was standing in line with Mr. Jimmy. Man, did he look pretty ill? And I sang my song to him, and he said one word to me, and that was dead. And I commented that maybe he didn't like Mick Jagger's song, or whoever Mick Jagger was in this song. Maybe it's being sung by Mick Jagger, and maybe it's maybe Mick Jagger had someone else in mind that was singing this song than him. It's possible, but obviously it's a literary creation. It might have been based on real life occurrences and meetings, but it seems like Jagger was creating this literary piece, and it's actually a well-written song. Is it a literary masterpiece? Perhaps not, but it's actually very good. And that this part about Mr. Jimmy, I can't help but think that after the death of Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison, Mick Jagger wasn't himself thinking about Mr. Jimmy in regard to their deaths. And before him, there was Dylan with Mr. Jones, right? And everyone was wondering who Mr. Jones was. Maybe it was Brian Jones, for all we know. The Rolling Stone member that died mysteriously. I think it was in '67. Anyway, I'm bringing this up because I think it's interesting, and the Mr. Jimmy might be the man that is the footloose man that is at the feet of the woman in the first verse of the song. Who knows? Perhaps that's what Jagger intended, what he meant there. In any case, I just, sometimes I'm going to come in here with some thoughts, thinking about the song a little bit more. Now that I've started to do this analysis, sometimes things come to me, and it did come to me that this was 1969. This was before the death of all three: Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Jim Morrison. The Holy Trinity of rock and roll, all dead at 27 within 9 months of each other, which is amazing. And the reason I say that is because this song came out before July 4th, 1969, which was before Woodstock, if I'm not mistaken. Janis Joplin was still alive. This song also, is the Rolling Stones. If you've never seen Gimme Shelter with the whole Altamont experience, that needs to be brought in too. With definitely this whole, their album Let It Bleed. The song is, I'd have to look back at the album, but the album might be a concept album, and obviously this song has blood in it. You know, and the blood is a very important motif in the song, and death is an important motif in the song as well. And maybe the song is on accepting death and learning to accept death ultimately. You know, you don't always get what you want, but you get what you need. Even death is necessary for all of us. And that's a segue now to the next song, and the man who was always talking about death and always singing about death and the end, and that was Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison, of any rock star, he's the one that I've looked into the most, and he's the one that I've been the most fascinated with, and I think probably for many people as well, not just me. Especially with that book that came out, No One Here Gets Out Alive, by Danny Sugarman, that came out, I think it was 1980, it might have been 81, that roped a lot of us in, that book, who didn't even know about the Doors, but then, you know, read that book and listened to the Doors, and the rest is history. And then, of course, Oliver Stone made his movie, and you know, a bunch of other things. The Doors are up there with the great bands. You know, they're up there with the Stones and the Beatles. And was Jim Morrison as great a songwriter as Lennon and McCartney, and as Jagger and Richards, Plant and Page? You know, it's really Morrison and Krieger, because Robbie Krieger, the guitarist, wrote Light My Fire. You know, Morrison just added a verse there in Light My Fire. But Krieger wrote some great songs too. You know, he wrote Touch Me. He wrote a bunch of really cool songs for the Doors. But they didn't write together. Krieger and Morrison didn't write together. Morrison obviously is known, and he wanted to be known as a poet, and he was a great poet. I have some of his books here, actually, a few of his poetry books. I wrote a book, actually, that's on Amazon. It's called Lord Jim, Mythos of a Rock Icon is the subtitle, Lord Jim. You can find it on Amazon under Allow Alani. That was a paper I did in college in folklore. It was not very well received. It was at Penn, University of Pennsylvania, and it was not very well received. But I thought tonight we would talk about a song that was on their first album, the Doors' first album, which actually did not chart very well. It was like their breakout hit, first written in 1965, one of their earliest demo songs, but released on their first album in 1967. Was the album called Break On Through? I forget now. Well, it's Doors' first album, Break On Through. And then in parentheses, To the Other Side. Let's read a little bit of it. We'll talk, as we go along. Anything else we could say about the song? The song is has different elements from apparently the groove is actually Brazilian, and the band played it at a lot of concerts. It was a staple at their concerts. It has become, even though it did not chart very well, it has become one of their greatest songs, and one of the songs that many people remember the Doors by. And it stands the test of time. If you play it, it rocks. It still is like intense. The day destroys the night. Night divides the day. Tried to run, tried to hide. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Yeah. We chased our pleasures here, dug our treasures there. But can you still recall the time we cried? Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Yeah, come on. Yeah. Everybody loves my baby. She get high. That was not, the high part was not on the original version because of the fear it would not get the right airplay if that was on there. Tells you a lot about how far we've come with music. And Ed Sullivan, was it this song or was it Light My Fire? Yeah, Girl, We Couldn't Get Much Higher. I forget what they wanted to change it to. They wanted them to change it, and then Jim Morrison forgot to change it. This is in the movie, but the movie doesn't get it right. Anyway, so they used the word high here as well, and it was in the reissued version has that lyric. Made the scene week to week, day to day, hour to hour. That apparently is from a novel that Jim Morrison, he didn't completely lift it, but he lifted the way it was written from the novel. The gate is straight, deep and wide. Break on through to the other side. That seems to be a reference to the Gospels. The gate is straight. The way to the kingdom is narrow, the straight and narrow. My yoke is easy. You know, Jesus said. You know, the day destroys the night. Night divides the day. Tried to run, tried to hide. Now, did Jim Morrison know what he was talking about? Because I don't know if anyone knows exactly what he was talking about. I forgot to read the verse that goes, I found an island in your arms, country in your eyes, arms that chain us, eyes that lie, break on through to the other side. Now, it's very poetic. It seems to be talking, he's talking about something in the past. We chased our pleasures here. We dug our treasures there. Now, it's like he's writing this after death. He's a discarnate entity that's reminding us and asking us to remember something. Maybe it's about the fleetingness of existence. And he seemed to be very intent, especially in the early days, on breaking through to the other side. Now, we know that he did a lot of LSD, and LSD had a very big role to play in his musical vision and his mission, if you can call it that, where he saw one night on LSD, he saw this whole rock myth. He called it the mythic rock concert or mythic concert, and a lot of the early material kind of came out of that. Obviously, it was influenced by other things as well, but you can't discount, just like you can't with John Lennon, the role that LSD and so much music of the 60s, the role that LSD played in it, the breaking through to the other side. Now, Jim Morrison was young, he was, how old was he when, in 65, he was what? He was probably 21. Who knows how old he was when he wrote the song, probably like 20 years old. Now, when you're young, it's all about destroying and breaking. Obviously, we have the idea of the breakthrough, right? A breakthrough. And, LSD can be like that too, the breaking through to the other side. It's a very mysterious song. I mean, I doubt anyone, I'm sure a Morrisonologist would probably be able to, pick up all sorts of clues from his writings and so on. But just for someone just listening to the song, it's very mysterious. Even now, even for me now, I've listened to this song now for the past 40-some years. Wow, 40 years listening to this song. And the meaning still is elusive. Everybody loves my baby. That's an old song. Who's his baby? She get high. Who's his baby that gets high? And then he says, I found an island in your arms. It's the same girl. I found an island in your arms, a country in your eyes. Arms that chain us, eyes that lie. So it quickly turns to the destruction of the romantic. He brings in the romance for a moment and then just quickly destroys it. It says, break on through. You can't find it in human relationships or in romance. You've got to break through. The gate is straight, deep and wide. Now, I really think that Morrison, just like Jimmy, and I did this in another video, that Jimmy recognized that he was the Christ, and I think Morrison did to a certain degree as well. And he alluded to that numerous times. Is he referencing the Gospels here? Perhaps. The gate is straight, deep, and wide. It's not a narrow gate. It's straight, but it's not narrow. Anyway, much to ponder. If anything, this video is just to highlight Mr. Jimmy. And to I kind of alluded to him in that last video when I mentioned Jimbo, Jim Morrison, Jimbo, Mr. Mojo Rising. If anyone, if I have a guru in this lifetime, it would be Jim Morrison, because he, I think he got it. I don't know if he went all the way, but he was well on his way. Maybe he did get it. Maybe he found, maybe he himself broke through. He realized that he did. And, he couldn't have, as far as I'm concerned, he couldn't have made the music he did, especially at so young an age, if he did not come to some supreme realization himself. But maybe not. I could be wrong about that. I would love to hear your comments, your thoughts. I mean, depending on who you ask, some people, especially don't watch the Oliver Stone film. I don't think that Oliver Stone got him right. Val Kilmer did a great job, but I don't know if he really got Jim Morrison. I don't know if Oliver Stone really presented it. presented Jim Morrison at least the way he really was. I don't think you could, actually. You'd have to be Jim Morrison to present Jim Morrison. But people will say he was an asshole, especially when he was drunk. He was jerk, maybe worse than Lou Reed, for all we know. But if you just take some time to read what he wrote and listen to his interviews, I think you'll see the guy behind the image that has been portrayed and projected by others. So anyway, the Gospel of Rock. Thanks for tuning in, and hear you next time. Rock on.